This is Dimitri Lascaris reporting for The Real News from Montreal, Canada. In Burnaby, British Columbia, it is the fourth day of resistance in what has been dubbed the Standing Rock of the North. The target of this resistance is the proposed $7 billion doubling of the TransMountain Kinder Morgan pipeline to carry dirty tar sands oil from Alberta to the British Columbia coast through the Burrard Inlet of North Vancouver. More than 60 people have now been arrested, including a former TransMountain environmental engineer, Romilly Kavanagh. During similar actions conducted Saturday through Tuesday, the arrests are ongoing. These actions follow the March 10th Protect the Inlet March, where thousands of people rallied against the pipeline and tanker project. Resistance is growing. In Canada, a national day of action has been called for this Friday against the Kinder Morgan TransMountain pipeline expansion. Now here to discuss the resistance with us is Clayton Thomas-Muller. Clayton is a member of the Treaty 6-based Matthias Kalom Cree Nation, also known as Pukatawagan, located in northern Manitoba, Canada. And based in Winnipeg, Clayton is the Stop It at the Source campaigner with 350.org. He joins us today from Winnipeg. Thanks very much for coming back on The Real News, Clayton.
Hey, thanks for having me, and hello to the viewers.
Clayton, let's start by talking about the injunction that has been issued by the British Columbia Court in relation to the construction site at the Kinder Morgan facility. What, in essence, does that injunction say?
Well, the injunction stipulates that anyone who violates the 5-meter barrier of the Kinder Morgan's TransMountain and tanker farm facility there in Burnaby Mountain, would be subject to a civil contempt charge. There's a non-criminal charge with 2 conditions, which are that A, they're not allowed to again violate the 5-meter zone, nor are they allowed to block traffic coming in or out of the gates there at Kinder Morgan's facilities. Over the last many days of rolling peaceful, nonviolent direct actions, we've seen over 60 people, be arrested, doing just that. And I think that, right now, as I speak to you, there are people facing arrest today, again, putting their bodies on the line to stop the TransMountain pipeline from being constructed.
Now, you yourself are one of the persons who was arrested at Burnaby Mountain. What were you doing when you were arrested, and how did the police treat you? And also, have you been charged with any offense? And if so, what is the charge?
No. Well, yes, I was one of the first 26 people to risk arrest last Saturday. And, I was arrested. I did sign a promise to appear, which of course provided a couple of conditions of which I'm not supposed to break, or I would face more severe charges. So, I along with many others will be appearing at some point in early June, through representation, of course, in the BC courts.
And at the time of your arrest, you were I take it, within the 5-meter barrier, or is this something you're not at liberty to talk about?
No, we were right there at the gate of the primary gate. There are a few entrances into the construction site where they're clearing trees to make way for the right-of-way of the proposed TransMountain pipeline. And, we rolled in there after, participating in ceremony at the Watch House, a traditional structure raised by the Tsleil-Waututh elders. This is a very old tradition where when the nation would be threatened, they would erect these watch houses to keep an eye on their enemies. So we stopped at the watch house there at the fence of Kinder Morgan's construction site, participated in a prayer and invocation by local Indigenous groups, and then proceeded to march to the gate, invoking the spirit of the civil rights movement, and then locked ourselves down to the gate using industrial zip ties, which then provoked a response from Kinder Morgan, who called in the RCMP to enforce the injunction.
Now, according to the RCMP that was reported on CBC today about this, 3 officers suffered minor injuries while making arrests on Monday against evening of demonstrators at the site of the expansion. And the Mounties say that 1 officer suffered a head injury after being kicked, another suffered a knee injury, and a third injured a hand. They seem to be relatively minor injuries. But is there a concern that, as a result of these sorts of things, that the police may become increasingly aggressive and potentially force some kind of a violent confrontation, such as, the kind of aggression perhaps that we saw at Standing Rock? Are there fears about that? Any signs that that might happen?
I think one of the things that proponents of this pipeline and also, the federal government who approved this project early in the Trudeau administration fear is a Standing Rock type situation. The police did report injuries in their enforcement of the injunction last night. But that said, the media, the Canadian press, as well as the CBC reported that they failed to report rather that these arrests happened outside of the injunction zone, actually in the crosswalk region in front of the property. And I think that RCMP also neglected to mention how incredibly escalated their arrest tactics were. They were very aggressive, against peaceful, nonviolent, very passive, land defenders, water defenders. I think there is a bit of sensationalization with the aim of criminalizing peaceful dissent in the actions of the local police stemming from yesterday's arrests. And of course, the media and proponents of the pipeline are running with that with the sole purpose of criminalizing peaceful dissent and criminalizing the actions of Indigenous peoples, which are not protests. They are quite simply assertions of territorial jurisdiction well within the means of the nation-to-nation relationship they have with the federal government of Canada.
Well, this is Dimitri Lascaris. I've been speaking to Clayton Thomas-Muller, 350.org, about a major series of resistance actions at Burnaby Mountain in British Columbia against the TransMountain pipeline expansion. Thank you very much for joining us again, Clayton, and we will be sure to follow the story as it unfolds.
Thank you so much for having me.
And this has been The Real News from Montreal, Canada.